What's up, everybody? It's DJ here today to bring you a beginner's guide to Spellbreak. Now, Spellbreak is a game that I've absolutely fallen in love with. I played it since release, and now what I want to do is share the knowledge that I've learned since playing it and help out any beginners out there who are thinking about giving the game a try or taking it seriously. Well, let's go ahead and start off. What is Spellbreak? Well, Spellbreak at its current state is a battle royale. They do have a Clash TDM mode coming out soon. I'll make a guide on that when that does come out. But it's basically a battle royale with battle mages where you have these gauntlets that control different elements. You can play solo, you can play with friends, which you'll see in the next clip gets pretty silly. But, you know, the game, the tutorial it gives you, it doesn't really teach you enough in my opinion. So that's why I made this guide. So what do you do next after the tutorial? Well, stay tuned and I should be able to teach you. Alright, so you finished the training and you're ready to drop into your first game of Spellbreak, whether that's Clash that's coming out or Battle Royale. Well, you need to know basically what happens and all the gear involved in the game. There's a lot of stuff that can be really overwhelming if you're a new player, so I kind of want to show you what there is so that way you go into the game knowing what you're doing. So you hit play. What happens first? Well, you got to pick a class. What is a class? Well, the classes are actually the 6 gauntlets in the game, and the class is basically the gauntlet you're going to start out with. On top of that, each element or gauntlet that you pick for your class is going to also have different abilities associated with it. Now, you get these different abilities when you level up. You level up by progressing through the game, going into the different zones. Now, I'm not going to be going through each of these abilities or perks that you get with the classes. I feel like that would take too long. But take the time, go through each one, read what they do, and see what fits your playstyle or sounds good to you. Alright, so you pick the class, you know what you want to do. Don't hit confirm yet. There's one more step. You got to pick your talents. Now, I can't emphasize enough how important talents actually are. When I was a beginner, I didn't realize how important they are. I just kind of wanted to play the game and get into it. Take the time to read the talents, see what they do, and unlock the ones that sound good to you. When you first start out, they're not going to all be unlocked. You have to rank up different classes in order to unlock them. But you have 3 slots for talents. You have mind, body, and spirit. They all do different things, so again, take the time, read through them. You also have 6 talent points. When you're looking at these talents, at the very right, you see the associated cost with having those talents. Of course, stronger talents are going to have more of a cost. As you can see here on the bottom too, this is what it's going to look like when you need to unlock a talent, right? So for Spellslinger, I need to rank my Tempest class up to level 6. So if there's a talent that you read through and you think you want or really like, level up the associated class in order to get that talent. So you got your class, you figured out the talent combo that you like. Let's go ahead and drop into the practice mode so I can show you all the different gear, ruins, and gauntlets in the game. So that way when you're first playing, you know what you like, you know what you want, and you can play with a little bit of confidence. Alright, so you drop in, and the first thing you want to do is aim for chests, right? You want to loot up, because when you start out, as you can see, you only get your starter gauntlet and your base talents. That's about it. So looting up gives you different advantages during the game. Alright, so the first thing we're going to look at are your gears, okay? Now this is going to actually affect your character. The first thing is the amulet. Now what amulets do is they actually affect your mana. So mana will allow you to jump higher, and it's your cost for your abilities. So as you can see, when I do an ability, my mana drops. An amulet will grant you more mana. So as you can see, with the legendary, look how much more mana it gives me, right? Now, when you go through the game, everything has rarities, as you can see. White being the least, gold being the highest. So keep that in mind when you're looting. You always want to grab the highest rarity, and you'll learn those as you go along. So amulets increase your mana. Super important. Next up are belts. Belts are actually the shields of the game, right? So as you can see on the bottom left for my character, it says 0 out of 0. Well, as soon as I pick up a belt, I get shields. And of course, the amount of shields you get corresponds to the level you have. And shields, obviously, with more health, you survive longer in fights. Last but not least, for gear, we have boots. Now, as you can see, I'm running pretty slow. What do boots do? They increase your movement speed, so they make you run faster. That's pretty much the basics of the gear. Next, I'm going to show you what the gauntlets do. Now, if you already know what the gauntlets do, feel free to skip past them. This is really truly a beginner's guide for someone who wants to get into the game and know what they're doing. I'm gonna have time descriptions in the description, so that way if there's something you want to skip, you can, or if there's something you like want to revisit, you can as well. So let's go ahead and start off with the gauntlet that I have in my hand currently. It's the Ice Gauntlet. So your main ability is basically like a bow and arrow. It's like the sniper of the game. Your main shot does high damage, right? And it's a fast projectile. That's your main ability. Your second ability is actually a blizzard that you cast around you. Now this blizzard does a couple of things. If someone is in the blizzard, it can either slow them down or freeze them if they don't have harmony, which is one of the talents. And it can actually block incoming projectiles. So if someone's shooting a fireball at you, if they're shooting lightning or wind shears, it'll actually block those abilities. So it's a nice offensive ability if you're up close, and a defensive ability if something's shooting at you and you need that little bit of defense. So that's the Ice Gauntlet. Next we have Stone. Now Stone actually shoots these tremors. Okay, now this is a ground ability, so you want to use this ability when the person you're fighting is on the ground or when they're about to hit the ground, and it does high damage, right? And the reason it does high damage is because it's limited to where it can hit. So this is a really beginner-friendly gauntlet. If you're new to the game, this is actually a gauntlet I do recommend. It has its advantages and disadvantages. So that's the main ability, is the tremor. The second ability is actually a boulder. Pretty self-explanatory. It just shoots a giant boulder, hits somebody, causes damage. Next up, we have the Fire Gauntlet. Now, the Fire Gauntlet is basically like the rocket launcher of this game. It shoots out fireballs at a pretty decent projectile speed, and when it hits its target, it causes damage. So with this one, this is a really well-balanced gauntlet in terms of fighting like mid to close range. You can hit people in the air, unlike with the Earth Gauntlet, but it does a little less damage than the Earth Gauntlet. So this is really good if you're someone that can lead your shots and you get used to the timing of it. The second ability is actually a Firewall. Now this does a couple of things. One, if someone's in the firewall, it'll damage them, right? And two, something else it can do, it'll actually block other shots. So it'll block an ice shot, and it'll block toxic. So it kind of like ice serves dual purpose. So you can use that how you would like. We actually do have toxic next. So the toxic is actually kind of like your shotgun, right? It shoots a spray. The closer you get, the more damage it does. It does damage per spray. So that's the main ability. So you really want to use this like the shotgun. The second ability is a Toxic Cloud. So the Toxic Cloud, when people are inside, does tick damage. Also, Toxic Cloud interacts with other elements. As you play the game, you'll see different element interactions. It's not something I'm going to go over in this video because we would be here forever. But as you play, you will learn these interactions. Next up, we have Lightning. Now, Lightning is pretty similar. I would compare it most similar to the assault rifle, right, for a first-person shooter. It's a very high-speed projectile that does tick damage, right, or damage upon hit, and it does decent damage as well. So this is really one if you're someone that's really good at tracking, or you just want to like mow someone down with damage over time, deal damage over time. This is a good gauntlet for you. If you're someone who would like assault rifles. The second ability is actually a lightning strike that you call down, and this does a couple of things. One, it deals damage, and two, if someone actually gets hit with it, they can actually get shocked. So I believe it's for a second and a half that they can't use abilities, and again, this only applies if they don't have harmony, which is a talent. Alright, last but not least, we have Wind. Now, Wind is basically the SMG of the game. It has a lot of utility, especially if you have the class. What it does is it shoots these wind shears. Now, as you can see, it kind of does low damage from far away, but it actually does way more damage as you get closer. So it's like the SMG of the game. Again, it's projectile, so you do want to lead your targets a little bit unless you're super close. But as you can see, as I got closer, it does way more damage, right? The second ability is actually a tornado. Now, what a tornado does is, as you can see, it draws people into it. So it's more of a utility thing than anything. It's really good for elemental combos. Again, I'm not going to go over elemental combos in this video, but it's something you will learn over time. And you can do some pretty nasty stuff with the tornado. So that's basically the gauntlets. Alright, next up we have the ruins. Now, there are a lot of ruins in the game, so it can be kind of intimidating, but I'm going to show you what each one actually does. Another side note, when you're in the practice mode, if you're deciding what class you want to use, you can actually level up your class. So see, I leveled up. Now I have the second ability of Frost, which allows me to hover. So if you ever want to see or test what your class does, you can level up here. Alright, so let's go ahead and start with the ruins. First rune we have is the invisibility rune. It's pretty self-explanatory. What it does, you go invisible. Now you'll see yourself, and your enemies can see you if they're looking really close. But yeah, that's pretty much the basics of it. You go invisible for a short period of time. Alright, the next one we have is a dash rune. So dash rune, as it kind of sounds, it allows you to dash. Now the dash rune is probably one of the most used runes in the game. It just offers high mobility, and it has a slow cooldown. Next up, we have Featherfall. Alright, so with Featherfall, it basically launches you into the air, and it makes you like a feather. You fall really slowly. Now, this, I just want to say it real quick in the beginner's guide. It's really easy to get attracted to Featherfall in the beginning. Just for my beginners out there, don't get too dependent on it. When you're in the air, and if you have somebody with lightning or frost, you're a really easy target for them, so keep that in mind. Next up, we have Spring Step. Now, Spring Step is actually one of my favorite runes in the game. Yes, I'm putting my biases in here. But it actually does a little leap forward and makes you land. And this one also has a short cooldown, which is another reason I like it. Alright, next we have Flight. Alright, so Flight, as you can imagine, and I actually think Flight is probably one of the funnest runes in the game. I don't think it's the best, but it's definitely one of the funnest. You fly. And you can fly in any direction that you want to go. Now, it does have a pretty high cooldown, so you want to keep that in mind, but it has multi-use, and as you play, you'll learn the different uses. Alright, next up, we have Wolf's Blood. So Wolf's Blood, it doesn't offer any utility or mobility, but what it does allow is you to see through walls. It's a wall hack, right? So you can see where enemies are, which is pretty good actually if you're in a squads game. If you have one person that runs this just to see where people are at, or if you're somebody that doesn't like invis, it's not a bad option. Next up we have Chronomaster. Alright, with Chronomaster, this one's a little complicated to explain, but I will try my best. But if any of you have played Overwatch or know of the character from Overwatch, Tracer, it's kind of like a rewind. Basically, when you activate the ability, it remembers where you started, and after the timer runs out, you come back to where you started at the same health that you were at. So if you wanted to get into a fight and you activated it before you got into the fight, and let's say you take damage while you're in that fight, it'll rewind you back to the point where if you didn't take damage beforehand, it'll heal you and put you back at where you're at. Again, it's not a mobility one, but it's more of a utility. Next up, we have Teleport. Alright, so Teleport, pretty self-explanatory, right? You hold down the rune itself, and it allows you to teleport to where you tell it to. Next up is Shadow Step. Now, Shadow Step is kind of the combination of two runes. It's kind of the combination of Dash as well as Invis, if they had a little love baby. So what it does is it dashes you, and then it makes you invisible for a short period of time. Now, you may ask, well, why would I want to use Dash or Invis if I have that? Well, there's a trade-off. With Shadow Step, it actually doesn't hold your momentum. You don't dash as far, and you don't stay as invisible as long as, you know, if you have the Invis rune. So it's all a trade-off. It's what your preference is. So those are basically the runes of the game. And that's pretty much the gear. As more gear comes out, as more runes come out, gauntlets come out, I'll make sure to do, you know, more guides on stuff. And I'll go more in depth of this stuff as well. Please feel free to leave suggestions or questions in the video. And I trust me, I read every comment, and I will respond to any questions that you guys might have. So that's pretty much going to do it for today's beginner's guide to Spellbreak. For those of you who have watched the video all the way through, I hope you found this guide helpful. I know it was a lot to take in, a lot to go over, but with how fun this game is, I really want players to enjoy it and know what they're doing. The future of the channel, I'm going to be uploading tons more videos trying to help you guys out. I'm no expert at the game by any means, but I think I'm pretty decent. So I would love to share the knowledge that I have, share the moments, and help you guys if I can. If you guys have any video suggestions in the future, please leave them below. And until next time, guys, have a good one.